Support for this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and here's my reminder to tell you that whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone. And it's easy to feel like you and you alone have to have it all figured out. But the truth is, nobody does. Not myself, not your neighbor, your cat or dog. Nobody has all the answers. And nobody should do this thing called life alone. One thing that keeps me up at night and I need help with is I'm a new parent. How much screen time, bedtime, is he getting enough playtime? It's stressful. So what helps me is to talk it out with people that I trust and I know they have my back. And BetterHelp works. They've got an average rating of 4.9 stars out of 5 for a live session based on almost 2 million client reviews. You don't have to be on this journey alone. Find support and have someone with you in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/elevator. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/elevator. Recovery Elevator episode 588.
If I'm still trying to use alcohol and make it work in my life, I'm just going to slide away. If I put it down, I can make progress in my life.
Welcome to the Recovery Elevator Podcast. My name is Paul Churchill, and this is How We Quit. On today's episode, we have Anita. She's 49 years old from Bend, Oregon, and she took her last drink of alcohol on January 4th of this year, 2026. Great job, Anita. If you think that quitting drinking is hard or is going to be hard, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm going to give you one thing that's harder. And I don't think just a little bit harder. I'm going to say way harder. Can you think about it for just a second? And that would be not quitting drinking, to continue down the path of addiction and destruction until, well, you know where that leads. Okay, none of these interviews are scripted. When people schedule an interview, they're sent a PDF of potential or possible questions, but there's not an email exchange that goes back and forth. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. And then I'm going to say this. You talk about that. This is off limits. Let's do that. Wherever the interview goes, that's where it goes. And something almost every single interviewee says before I hit record is, oh my God, I'm freaking nervous. So if you could seriously just put your hands together for everybody who's done an interview on this podcast to come and talk about some of the deepest, most raw things in their life. I know for me, my drinking problem was my deepest, darkest secret, and nobody knew but me. Well, until it becomes impossible to keep it that way, and friends, family, people, law enforcement will tell you you've got a problem. Okay, so in the interview with Anita today, we get into religion. And there was part of me during the recording is like, oh my gosh, religion, Christianity, this is triggering for a lot of people, including myself, including Anita. And I almost tried to steer the conversation away from that, but there was an internal dialogue that said, no, Paul, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're doing. I have so many religious scars from growing up non-Mormon in a heavily Mormon place south of Salt Lake City. But I also might have just been a sensitive kid and felt everything so deeply. In fact, the other day I was going through a closet or a drawer and I had things from childhood in there and I had my 3rd grade class photo cut up. And I looked at all the kids and they were all so kind to me. And I was the only non-Mormon in the class. So maybe my memory isn't even accurate with that, but I did feel the exclusion. And a thought I had about a year ago, it was almost like a light bulb moment going, whoa. I remember we'd go to Episcopalian church. My parents made a point to take us to church, which I'm thankful for that. And I would take the biggest swig of wine during communion. And I'm like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years old. I'd fill my entire mouth with wine, or as much as I could fill. And I would just sit in the chair and let the alcohol soak into my blood through my mouth, in my throat. And I would have became an alcoholic anyways, but that didn't help. So about 3 years ago, my wife and I started going to a church. The main point of this is to dive deeper into community, the local community here. Look, the opposite of addiction is connection, and that is all encompassing. So I do it to meet people who live in the same area. And it's been overall an incredibly positive experience. Shortly after that, I joined the worship band and I play electric guitar. I absolutely love the music. Shane and Shane, This Is How the Story Ends. My gosh, I love that song. And I'm pumped when I'm placed in the band and we play that song, sweet electric guitar solo at the end. But there have been many times over the past 3 years where I've wanted to run. There's a voice that says, we're done with this and we're not going to be here next week. And in fact, our church just built a new church. And I said, well, here's a good exit strategy. We'll just stop going. But I've heard that voice before. And that was the addictive voice that wants me alone. And I hear that voice and say, okay, we don't have to go. But there's a deeper voice that says, Paul, just keep showing up. Keep going. At least you're going to become a better guitar player through the process. You like the music. And there's really good people at the church. And there's a phrase in the AA space that says, focus on the similarities and not the differences. And that's what I have to do. I'm not a fan of ramming down that you're a shameful person or you were born a sin. In fact, 8 or 9, 10 weeks ago, that was the topic of the sermons. You were born a sin. And my son was asleep in his car seat that we took out of the car and just set it next to us in the row. And while this pastor was talking, I was looking down at him. I'm like, bullshit. This kid is perfect. Don't come at me with that stuff. In fact, I got up and I left the sermon and I sent a voice memo to Patrick F. He's been interviewed on this podcast. He's in our community. He has like 19 doctorates in theology, spent a lot of time in seminary, knows more than anybody I know about this stuff. And he has helped me walk off some ledges with this where I'm like, I'm out. And yes, the Crusades, the Inquisition, overall religion has brought a tremendous amount of pain to people. And Carl Jung had the line that says religion was created to prevent people from having religious experiences. But I think that's because humanity got involved. The original teachings of Jesus, from what I can read and decipher, I'm a fan of it. And before he was crucified, he simplified things for his disciples because they're like, what are we going to do when you're gone? He's like, hey, I'm going to give you one commandment. That's it. You don't have to be perfect in anything except for this. It's love thy neighbor. That's it. I can get behind that. I can hitch my horse to that wagon. But there's something that has to happen first. Before you can be kind to others, you have to first be kind to yourself, because people who hate other people, they hate themselves. People who are mean to other people, they're mean to themselves inside. And that's where Luke 17:21 comes into play, that the kingdom of heaven is already inside of you. And it was only from my addiction that I start to believe that, saying, wait, happiness, salvation is not outside of me. It's not found in a bottle. Lord knows how much I tried to find it. It's inside of me. It's inside of me all the time for eternity. So the further I go without a drink, the more I'm deepening with the concept that the kingdom of heaven is already with me, that I don't have to go every single Sunday, put money in the bucket, give 10% of my monthly salary, tithing, to then be saved after a lifetime of being a sinner. You don't have to believe everything you hear. And that's something I'm still grappling with. I'm still figuring out. But yes, I'm not perfect. I have character defects, is what they say in AA, but I'm also an incredible person as well. We all are, including you. But I'm going to keep going back. I will. I'm a big fan of our pastor. He wears Nike Dunk shoes, doesn't fit the bill, tattoos everywhere. There are things he says, I'm like, no way, I just heard that. But then I can check that voice and say, hey, Paul, stick around. What's the worst that can happen? And there's a TV show called Young Sheldon. This kid Sheldon was dogging Christianity and he was reading a book about it, or religion in general. And the upside is limitless. Why would you believe? You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. You say you're a full believer and it's not true. Like, well, okay, whatever. And if it is true, wow. That's all I have to say there with that. And I think it's listen to me quoting Bible verses, and stick with me, guys, because when I started this podcast, I was an atheist with a capital A. James 2:26, for as the body without spirit is dead, faith without works is dead also. An idea of sobriety without action is dead. It doesn't work. So this faith without action, it doesn't work. So you're taking the action, you're listening, you're being here. And one more thing before we get to Anita, a member of our church asked me out to hear my story, which first off, I was like, nobody wants to go have coffee and just listen. That's not how it is. And of course, at the end of this meeting, he passed a pamphlet to me of how I could be saved. And I'm like, dude, I'm already going to your church, man. But there was something he said during it that I didn't get upset, but I'm like, all right, come on. So I was told so many times. So I was told maybe not so many times, maybe it was just once or twice that really stung so badly when I was a child that I was not going to heaven because I was not Mormon. And I was telling this guy that Jesus told his disciples that you were already in the midst of heaven. And this guy laughs and he goes, he didn't say that. And you're definitely not in heaven. And I remember sitting there was a gap in my response. And I was looking at the trees outside, who just recently budded their leaves. And I could see the clouds in the distance. And I said, no, part of me already is. And I wasn't there to convince that person, no, man, we are. But I do think that the addiction has taught me, yes, part of us inhabits the world at the time, psychological clock time. We're on this world. It could be quite painful, but there's another part of us, the soul part of us that Christianity does believe in, that we are inhabiting the timeless at the exact same time. And original sin in Christianity it's a Greek word and it translates to miss the mark. What's the mark? It's missing the present moment. It's getting outside of the mind. So I think all of the teachings point to that. Pretty much all the teachings of an addiction point to the same thing as presence, being here in the moment. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. That's the famous line about the lilies toiling. Don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will have its own worries. So a lot of it is all pointing the same, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism. Basically, all religions point to a couple things. Number one, that's right here. It's right here in this moment. That's where you're going to find your presence. That's where you're going to find your peace. And the second part, which all religions can be distilled to, is love thy neighbor. Guys, I think this is one of the most profound and interesting times to be alive. Thank you for sticking with me in this intro. I know religion can be divisive, controversial, triggering as all hell for some, as it was for me and kind of still is, and for Anita as well. And I ask you to be open during the interview and be open on your own journey. Again, day one of sobriety, I wanted nothing to do with this. And then about month 5 or 6, I was sitting by myself in the snow, in the forest, and I heard the wind in the trees. And that's when that spark showed up. And now let's hear from Anita. Anita, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for
Good.
asking. Let's get right into this. When was your last drink, Anita?
It was January 4, 2026.
Yeah, right on. How do you feel?
You know, Paul, I've heard you ask this question a lot of times. People, I'm like a 5 out of 10, but I used to be a 3 out of 10. So that's how I feel.
Hey, there we go. I appreciate your honest response
Yeah.
there. Yeah, most people are like, wow, I feel great. It's been months or years since my last drink. But
Yeah.
occasionally people are like, yeah, I feel like shit. All answers are welcome.
With the 5 out of 10, it's a struggle. My life is a daily struggle. And with the booze down, I'm able to handle it better and kind of chip away at the pieces that are noxious. So, but it's just some people are like, I'm great. And I'm in it.
There we go. There
Okay.
we go. Well, I'm excited to learn more about your story and share it with the audience. But before we do so, Anita, give us some information about yourself. This is where you're calling in from, your age. What does your family life look like? What does your professional life look like? And then what do you like to do for fun?
Okay. So I'm 49 and I'm a family doctor. I've done that for 20 years, being in medicine and being a doctor. I live with my cat. Her name is Bella. She's 9 years old. And I wish I had a partner. I don't. I did, 5 years ago for 6 years. And that is a piece of my reality is that I'm single and I wish I had more companionship. Thankfully, my parents live in town. They live in Bend, Oregon, and my older sister lives here. Actually, all my family lives here now. So my younger sister and brother too.
What do you like to do for fun?
I like to be in my body. I love to hike. I like to do cold plunges. I like to turn music on, dance around the living room. I like to go, for instance, to Esalen. I don't know if you've heard of that place. It's a retreat place in Big Sur, California. So I like to just do kind of little adventures.
I went to Bend, Oregon, I think when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I hear it has grown tremendously since then. What's Bend, Oregon like? I remember there being a lot of pine trees.
Dude, you're right. There's a lot of pine trees and it's high desert here. So I'm from the Portland area, which is a little more lush and really piney. Bend is high desert, so there's lakes. I don't care for it. People love it because of the recreation, but it's cold like 8 months of the year. And so people move here to ski, snowboard. They move here to mountain bike, like kind of really embrace or interact with nature. And I'm grateful for that piece of it, but I also miss a city and that kind of stimulation and the diversity of a city. But I live here because I moved here 20 years ago because my sister moved here and my niece Ava was 1 at the time and now she's 19. And she's pretty much my lifeblood. So I've stayed in Bend, minus a segue to Santa Monica 15 years ago when I tried to get out of medicine and become a screenwriter, and that was a fail. So I moved to LA briefly and then I've been back here.
Well, hey, you went after your dreams. That's more than most people do. So awesome. And it got you there. All right. Well, Anita, let's do this. I'm going to turn it over to you and your story into and out of a drinking problem. I'll ask questions as I see fit. Let's do this.
So I would say that my drinking problem began with being human and I guess being plopped into this situation that was not organic. So I was raised in a Christian cult. We insiders, people in the meeting, we just called it the meeting. But it was weird because we went to public schools. And so as a little girl, I just felt out of it at a public school, always nervous, anxious. And I would bring that energy home, and we didn't have TV. So the closest I got to something that was entertaining was reading the comics. I would come home, I'd read the comics, and I would start snacking. And that pattern developed over adolescence into high school. And then I would start restricting and binging because, like, I feel like any drug, whether it's sugar, alcohol, stimulants, cannabis, scrolling, it feeds something and it works for a while and then it gets out of hand and you have receptor adaptation, you build tolerance and it doesn't work anymore. But I kept going at it with food on the sly. And then when I moved to undergrad in Michigan and I chose a Christian college, so I went to a public school all through high school. And near the end of high school, my family actually left the meeting. And that was really hard because I didn't have any good friends in school. I just had a best friend in the meeting. Her name was Hannah. And when we left the meeting, she got engaged. She was married at age 17. She has like kids and a couple grandkids now. She shuns me because I'm not in the meeting. And the reason I point that out is it's trauma. And I think a lot of us use around feeling dysregulated or abandoned. And I used sugar to mitigate that. So my exposure to alcohol growing up is we'd have like a red bottle of wine over the fridge that my dad would occasionally have a little bit from because his doctor told him that that would help his nerves. And then in the meeting, that system I was raised in, on Sundays, they would pass around with the breaking of bread a cup of wine, 2 cups. People would take a sip out of it and pass it on. That was the first time I had alcohol. I freaking loved it because I knew like this is off limits. I didn't care. It tasted whatever it was bitter. I was curious. And then my other exposure to it was stinky beer cans on the side of the road that we collect for 5 cents as kids. And when I picked those up, I knew that those homeless people or the drunkards who were just throwing them out the window, I knew they were going to hell. I felt superior. I was like, ew, I'm going to make this money. And then my first drink of beer, it was actually cold and delicious because I thought it would be off-putting. My sister Sherry had gone to Holland and been a nanny for a year, and she came back and she liked Heineken. And the whole family was out of the meeting by then, so we were starting to loosen up a little bit. And we were having to get together with Sherry, and she said, "Would you like a sip of my beer?" And I was probably like 18. And my parents were there, and I just felt like, hey, we've come a long ways. We can have alcohol moderately. And I took a sip and I was like, I love it. It's not that stinky. It's interesting. And then in college and undergrad, my peers were drinking and I wouldn't because I was still Christian. I remained Christian for a long time. And I had a fear of alcohol and I also had a reverence for rules. It's against the law to drink unless you're 21 and older. So I just took it literally. And I thought that my fellow Christian classmates were heretics for drinking. But then when I turned 21, my sister took me out and I had 5 drinks that night. 5. I remember sitting on the bar stool next to my friend Cindy, this high school friend I had brought, and I barely had any friends in high school. And Cindy was kind of a hybrid between nerd, which was what I was, and then my sister and her friend. And I remember kind of like being like, all right, I gotta stay on this bar stool because I felt a little tipsy. I thought, is this what people do? They get buzzed or drunk and they just externally pretend like do do do. And I loved it. I loved the game in my head, the charade. And I thought I like this too much. I knew it. I'm like, I like this too much.
So Anita, you said from the first time, you're like, I really like this.
Yeah.
And you probably double stamped that and said, look, I'm going to do this again. When was the next
Yeah.
time?
I just started drinking through med school and I was still Christian, so I knew I needed to be a light for my classmates. They would just party lackadaisically, and I was more superior. I would drink water, have a drink or two. I think I just knew, Paul, with my experience with sugar. And this is the piece I didn't say yet. My sugar and food addiction got so out of hand that my counselor suggested going to OA. And I experimented in OA for probably 7, 8 years between the ages of like 20 and 30. And there's different kinds of Overeaters Anonymous groups. Some are, they call it moderate mealing, where with a sponsor, you decide to exclude the foods that trigger you. And then the most extreme one is gray sheet. They follow this meal plan where they would weigh 3 meals a day on a scale, nothing in between. I did that 5 years. And on the gray sheet, you can't have sugar, alcohol, or grain. And I knew that it was good that I had the alcohol down because between trying the alcohol at age 21 and then getting abstinent from compulsive overeating on the gray sheet around age 28, I would use alcohol strategically, always observing it. And I was like, don't get addicted because I could tell I would. And so I paced myself. Sugar was my main drug of choice, but I was already starting to use the alcohol, kind of toggle it with it. Sugar was the main thing killing me because I was binging and purging. So I got clean from that by eating food only on the gray sheet, and the gray sheet excluded sugar, alcohol, and grain. And so that was 5 years of no alcohol. And when I look back, I'm like, thank God for those 5 years because it would have escalated with the alcohol. And what I loved about alcohol is you could drink and be skinny. Whereas if you're binging, restricting, purging, you're getting puffy. So it was down with those 5 years. But then after the 5 years, when I became an atheist, I was like, you know what? I don't even like medicine. I went into medicine to be a medical missionary for God. That's out the window. And I took the next 4 years to find a sunny place to live. I went to a few different cities. I chose Santa Monica, but I started having more sugar and alcohol. And when I moved to Santa Monica, it was alone. I left my family here. I just trusted the universe. Even though I was an atheist, I just trusted that if you throw yourself into the stream of life, it will support you. But I got broken down there. I had to move 3 times and I had to try to find doctor jobs that were part time, and I would soothe my empty soul with alcohol and food in the evening. And I got more and more sick and sad. My body got weak. I got really skinny, which I loved, but I had a nervous breakdown.
So you quit drinking at 49 or 48,
Yeah.
4 months ago. Awesome.
But I've quit drinking probably 5 times in the last 8 years, whether it was for 2 weeks or 30 days, or there was another 5 year period where I quit.
Okay. Where was alcohol taking you? Was it something where you were drinking every single night? How much were you drinking? What type of
Yeah.
alcohol were you drinking?
I would drink anything. I actually loved liquor because it hit you harder in like a tiny hiney, right? Like vodka and a club soda so you don't get fat. So I would do like hard liquor with club soda, but I liked beer and wine as well. How much I was drinking between the ages of 33 and 49 when I would have it. I would have 1 to 2 to 3 a night, on weekends, maybe 4, 5. I loved getting crazy with it. I never got a DUI. I should have. There was a period in my life where it was around age 42. I had a breakup. I broke up with that guy that I mentioned. After that ended, I started self-soothing with alcohol and food. And I had this realization like, I can't keep sitting on the couch drinking. It made me depressed, puffy skin, more irritable, more anxious. So I'm like, I'm going to do Uber in the evening. And I did. I became an Uber driver on top of being a doctor just so I could get out and chop wood, carry water, socialize. But you know what I did? I would freaking take alcohol in the car with me. And I made sure to not have more than 1 or 2 drinks per evening. But who does that? I do that. I've done that from early on with alcohol. I've snuck at places.
Yeah, you and almost every other interviewee on this podcast, probably all of them, but I am guessing that's on Uber's guidelines, probably at the very top. No alcoholic beverages while driving, paying customers around.
I was apprehensive about saying that. I don't know if I should have, but I figure, you know what? Why not be real? I did that and I felt like I was in control. I knew it was risky, but I took that choice to have people in the car and drive with them.
Anita, I want to give you permission to be real on this podcast. That's why we're still
Okay.
doing this 10 years later and why people are still tuning in. Yes. And we've heard that and much more. I was going to say much worse, but just much more. It's everybody's story is different. And I bet you there might be an Uber driver right now listening to a podcast from Anita who's thrown down a couple road sodas, who's got the earbuds in with a passenger in the back. We're talking to you.
It made every drive much more enjoyable.
It made
It was
everything
not
fun.
sustainable. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
makes everything fun until you
Yeah.
crash the Uber with,
I don't encourage it.
yeah. All right. So there probably was a voice. You just said, hey, I don't want to sit in the couch and drink. I don't want to be driving Uber, driving people around and sneaking drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Was there an action to cut back? Was there a voice
Yeah,
saying, we got to quit?
thank you. Yep. So I tried to quit on my own, and even though it was just 2 to 3 drinks a night, I could see that it was digging me deeper into the couch. And I knew that alcohol, especially as a doctor over 20 years, if someone walks in my room and they're a daily drinker, I can tell because they have a sick look. Their middle is bigger and they look wan. So it was almost like vanity and almost wanting to be in my own body. So I'm like, I'm going to stop it. And I read that book by Russell Brand. He's had a journey since then, but like 6 years ago, I read his book. And it was, I think in the first chapter, he talked about Chip, somebody, this guy who saved him, an alcohol addiction counselor, by intervening and saying, you're going to kill yourself if you keep doing this. And I knew the same was true for me as well. I knew I can only white knuckle this for a period of time. And I wanted help, but I didn't want AA because I had had issues with like Holly Whitaker in her book, Quit Like a Woman. She talks about some of that in the 1930s, AA was built mostly by white men and it had a pretty religious template, even though they say it's not religious. I don't need to expound on that other than AA was not, it wasn't what I could handle without triggering me. So I wanted to find an alternative route with some accountability. And I reached out to Chip, this guy who helped Russell Brand get sober. And he was my addiction counselor for a year. And I helped him help me in the way I wanted to be helped. So it wasn't completely honest, but it was what I was willing to do at the time. And I was able to cut back. You know that song by Paul Simon, Slip Sliding Away? The closer you get to your destination, the more you keep slip sliding away. I've been thinking about that song lately because if I'm still trying to use alcohol and make it work in my life, I'm just going to slip slide away. If I put it down, I can make progress in my life. So Chip helping me wasn't good enough. I was still in the cups. And then it was October 2023 where I thought, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to AA. Even though I don't like a lot of the men there who extol on things, I need help. And it was that, step one admitted we are powerless. It was that receptivity that I had in my heart. And I went to an AA meeting. It was during COVID, and here in Bend, Oregon, like in February and March, it's very frigid. And this group met at 7 a.m. outside in these folding chairs, and they would make like a little campfire. And I loved their unity. I didn't love it that I was there. I didn't want to be an alcoholic, but I knew I needed help. My sponsor, back when I was in the food program for 5 years, she taught me to speak up. She would say, if you're at a meeting, share. And I decided to step into the stream. And my first day there, I just said, hey, I'm here and blah, blah. I said, I don't know if I'm an alcoholic. And I cried and I received help and I got 30 days. And what happened in that group near the end of that 30 days, I chose a sponsor who was soft, meaning she was kind. She was not rigid. She was trans and she was brown skinned. And I needed someone who knew what it's like to struggle and to navigate a world where you're not in the power structure. And what happened in one meeting, I was proud in a not a hubris way, but a happy way of my sobriety. And I was grateful. And I told the group, I said, I couldn't have done this without you. I can't not drink without you. I'm an atheist and, group of drunks. You guys are my higher power. And 2 shares after that, this white dude, he was like, there's going to come a day where nothing will stand between you and your next drink except for God and not the group God, God. And that pierced me. And I thought, this is not a safe place. And I tried to work through it. I talked to my sponsor about it. And in the end, I just catapulted out. And I had stopped and then I picked it up. And then on January 4, I got a chance to stop again. And that's when I came across your book called Alcohol is Shit. It was auspicious what happened to me that day.
This is this year, January
Yeah.
4th, 2026.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I also want to say what that guy said in that A meeting. That's pretty effing lame.
Paul, thank you for that. That means a lot. So you were asking me what happened when I quit on January 5. Look, I'm an atheist. I don't believe that things happen for a reason. And sometimes there's a wrinkle in what happens to me where I say, thank you, God. Thank you, chance, that this came into play. And that happened for me on January 5. I was at the clinic. It was a Monday and it was a long day. I see patients from 8 to 5, but sometimes I'm there charting until 7:30 or 8. And it was one of those evenings where I was so angry that this was my life, that I'm on patient charts and I can't get out at a reasonable hour, go for a jog, mingle with the universe. And I was in the exam room kind of straightening things up. And I was trying to find the calendar that I had bought for the new year and I couldn't find it. And I'm looking through the cupboards and I pull out this lone book that says Alcohol is Shit by Paul Churchill. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I bought this a few years ago when I was doing my Sober Curious thing. And I had brought some of those books to my clinic so other people can read them. Like Holly Whitaker's book was sitting there and some other ones. Yours, I put in the cupboard after a while because I was like, that's a really strong statement. What if some of my patients don't appreciate that? And I also felt that I didn't adhere to that since I had gone back to alcohol. So I just put it in the cupboard, forgot about it. And on January 5, I picked it up and I'm like, God damn it, what is this stupid book? And I opened it up, like page 60 something. I read a couple paragraphs and I thought, this is true. What he's saying is true. I flipped it to the back, like, who is this guy? Okay, recovery elevator. Huh. Oh, okay. All right. And I said, maybe I'll just take a listen to an episode on the ride to the gym. So I did that and I heard Sarah in San Diego. And she had her last drink about 5 months prior. And I remember you asked people in the podcast, you'll say, like, do you have cravings? Do you think you're going to pick up? And I think she said, yes, of course, I think about it. But I remember thinking, Sarah, you have 5 months. You're not going to drink again. You have 5 fucking months. I can't get together one day without stopping at Safeway to get my champagne. It's not a copious amount, but it's 2.5 glasses. And that episode spoke to me on multiple levels. She's surfing, she's painting. I wanted to be back in the stream of life, and I knew that alcohol was buffering that. And with Sarah, I related to her food and alcohol issue. Like she would go on geographical cures, like she went hiking or something for 5 days, didn't drink, and kind of like you in your book, Dolce Vita, you would do these bits where you wouldn't drink. And I loved how you unpacked how much you suffered with putting it down, picking it up, and you recalled like, I had 3 days not drinking or whatever. That's what it was like for me, is my life had become focused around, am I drinking or not drinking? I'm going to make sure I control it enough so that I can drink, but it was keeping me sick. And so also, Paul, when I heard that episode, the very first thing you said, maybe there's some new listeners here. So this is what we're all about. And you go, we're not trying to change our relationship with alcohol. Why would you want to have a relationship with a class 1 carcinogenic? It was like, that's true. And you're like, I don't want alcohol in my, I think you said blood. And the way you put it, I saw the truth of it, that it was a sneaky molecule that our body perceives as a toxin. And I had the willingness to not drink that night. And
Wow.
I kept it going and I'm going to keep it going.
I remember that interview with Sarah. She was such a beautiful painter, and I could see the paintings in the background while we did the interview. I love hearing stories when people pinpoint specific interviews from the past and people because it's like this works, right? Because
It
somebody's going to go,
works.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, Anita, 4 months ago, I heard this interview with Anita, and like, I
Mhm.
don't resonate with AA, the whole God thing. I'm also an atheist. But if Anita can go 4+ months away from alcohol, at the time of this, when it comes out, you'll have more than that. I can do it too. That's the power of this whole thing. This is storytelling. And Anita, you're telling your story. And so within the last 4 months without alcohol, have you had cravings? I'm guessing you have. How did you get past them? How are
Yeah.
you moving forward?
Yeah. Thank you. I'll answer that. I want to say first with what you said about how some episodes strike people. The other thing about Sarah is that she is a high functioning alcohol user. She was, and so am I. She acknowledged that. And I remember thinking, we get to choose how low we go. It doesn't have to be completely disastrous. So I remember recognizing that in her story and mine. And it's kind of like, okay, she wasn't at the bottom, and I'm not either, but I know I will be. I do think of alcohol, but it's weird because it doesn't actually nip at my heels the way it did all the rest of my life whenever I put it down, because I know intuitively, and this is a gift from nature or the universe or my intuition, and this is where the auspiciousness comes in. When I say I'm an atheist, I don't believe there's a personal God controlling our lives. We don't have an inherent purpose. We're here as a mistake. It's chaos. There's pain and pleasure. But what I have felt as a gift that has landed on me that is mystical and I receive it is I have an internal instinct that it's toxic. And I know if I pick it up, it is not going to heal that wound or fill that hole. And if I keep it down, I can create more realness that will address those issues, the vacancy, the frustration, whatever it is I feel as a human.
When you say keep it down, you mean don't drink.
Yep, that's what I mean.
Okay. What role do you think alcohol was playing? And usually when we remove the alcohol, it shows up pretty quick.
Right. It was playing a role of pacifying me and soothing me, which I needed in quotes. When you live alone and I'm lambasted with patients all day, in addition, whatever their needs are, I go into a visit and I think it's just blood pressure. Like maybe I'll catch up with this one. The other person had 8 issues. It's a blood pressure follow-up. How are you? Well, my mom just died. Oh God. Like after 20 years of doing this, dude, there's only so much like a nervous system can triage. And then coming home to a vacant house. So alcohol would accompany me while I cut and chopped my vegetables, while I played music, talked to my cat. It just took the edge off and it stopped delivering like any drug will. It stopped delivering.
Anita, how has your life changed in the last month, 2 and 3 and 4?
You know what, Paul? There's been a few changes, and one of them is I'm more receptive to disappointment. I see it almost as the hand of God. There's a expression in the rooms, rejection is protection. And so let's say like I have a day off and I
What
think
rooms are we talking about here?
when I was in the 12-step rooms like OA, I feel like I heard rejection is protection, like if something doesn't work out.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that one, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
here to learn too.
Yeah.
Rejection is protection.
Yeah.
Unpack
So
that for us.
yeah, so what's changed is like when I was drinking, if something shitty or annoying happened, which it will 40 times a day, it would take me out. I'd personalize it, get upset on that one hook. And now I feel like alcohol is giving me a pause where I can actually look at my life realistically and I can be like, all right, I'm irritated and I can play with it. I can let go. And if I can't get those 8 things in that I wanted to do on my day off and I only get 2 in, I say, you know what? It wasn't meant to be. Why? Because it didn't happen. Not in a mystical way, it's not meant to be, but it's just not my reality. So I'm going to accept it. So it's helped me be more patient with the pitfalls and the missed opportunities that I feel like I have socially or whatever it is in life because I'm so tired from work or recovering. And it's allowed me to be more in bedroom slippers mode and heal. It's allowed me to be more strategic. Like some of my junk drawers are getting cleaned up. I'm checking things off the list. I made an appointment with a skin doctor to see if I have basal cell in my nose or not. And I've been thinking of doing that for 5 months. So it allows me to be a creature and get stuff done instead of just being this pacified organism that's recovering every day from the alcohol I had the day before.
Anita, you're not going to AA. No worries. Not the jive for everybody. But what is working for you? How are you staying sober?
So what's working for me is listening to your podcast, and I actually joined Cafe RE. I committed to a year when I signed up for it 5 weeks ago. I haven't yet hopped in. I'm going to do that this weekend because I hate computers. I'm on a screen all day. But one thing I did, you talked about burning your bridges in Dolce Vitae.
Burning the
Vita, okay.
ships or the
Okay.
bridges,
Yeah, and you
all the
talked about
same.
burning the bridges, and I tether myself by telling people I don't drink. Like I've told my mom and I've told a couple close friends, and I'm going to become a part of Cafe RE and chat with people in the group, go to a event sometime. I was thinking of going to Montana. Like I'm a sensitive sleeper, so I can't do like the six people in a room with bunk beds. I'm gonna stay in the stream of life with other sober people. And this is the piece of it that's really important. I have to find meaning in my life. And so I use things like books or YouTube videos. Like lately, I've been listening to a YouTube video. It's 58 minutes. It's John O'Donohue, who is a renowned Irish poet, philosopher. He was a Catholic priest for 19 years. So he was with people when they died. And in this 58-minute video, if you Google John O'Donohue and the word imagination, 11 minutes in, he's talking about being there when people die. A lot of people are surprised that this was it, that it's over. And so that is a reminder to me that this sober path that I have ahead of me, I can make the most out of my life in the most, I guess, porous or authentic way without selling my soul. I hate being a doctor. I'm done, but I can't find another job right now, but I'm going to keep trying. And that's like the selling my soul piece. I don't want to be stuck in a room for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but at the time being, maybe that's where you have to be for the near
Thank
future.
you. Good
Yeah,
point.
yeah. And I hope, or I wonder if your recovery becomes an asset in the rooms of being a doctor. I know it is overall, but I have the ones that I've
Yes.
connected with when I was struggling with alcohol. And if I would get a doctor, be like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sober, or
Yep.
they would say, like, hey, my brother, because you know it in so many of your hospital visits, not hospital, but in your doctor room visits,
Yeah.
alcohol is a big part of it. Why their blood pressure is off, why they're overweight,
Yep.
why the color in their face is off, like you mentioned earlier. And so maybe you can be the beacon of light in a pretty sick world
I
right
am a
now.
beacon. I am that way. And I do share. I don't overshare, but I tell people about your podcast. If I'm not drinking, I say, I've put alcohol down and it's helping me this way. Here's some options. I do that with people who are on the fence or receptive. The whole reason I went into medicine was a concept of wounded healer. The places that were wounded can really minister to people. I want to say, you asked how the last 4 months have been for me. I'm more tactile. I go for walks at night. I will prostrate myself on my knees or even just lie down on the road and say thank you to the earth, to the universe. If I get my hands in dirt, even just to pot a plant, I'm happy. So I'm very much trying to interact with nature so it can like reteach me where my place is in things. My place is I'm here randomly. I get to participate. If the alcohol is down, I stand a chance to participate in a real way. If I'm using it, it's going to make me sad.
We have hit the rapid fire round. If you could answer these questions within 5 to 10 seconds, that would be great. What's the one thing you've learned about yourself in the last 4 months?
I'm kind and funny, and I need a platform.
What's your best sober moment?
I'd say conversations with my mom and dad.
What's your favorite alcohol-free drink?
Okay, I like to take a lime and squeeze it and add some brown sugar to that, swirl it, and then pour it over ice with some club soda.
What's the point of life?
We just have to keep learning and accept that there's going to be pain. It's not supposed to be appropriate or scripted because this is all chaos. So it's just to become more authentically yourself.
If you are looking for a partner in life, what's your next first step?
To keep the alcohol down so I can insert myself in more real life opportunities, such as getting up earlier in the morning and going to a yoga class.
And what advice can you give to somebody who wants to quit drinking?
I would say give it a chance, listen to your heart. And if you feel like alcohol could be holding you back, give your heart the chance. If you're listening to this, you're already conflicted about it. So give your heart a chance to have a day without alcohol and see where that takes you.
And Anita, before we depart, let's hear your own "you might need to ditch the booze if" line.
You might need to ditch the booze if it's a niggle in your brain.
Yeah, just even a small thought. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, Anita, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Congratulations on 4 months alcohol free. Keep it going. The miracle will come, and it's already here, right? And that's it. The
Yeah.
miracle will come.
Mm-hmm.
It's already here.
Yeah, there's a line, it's already not yet. So we're already in it and it's not yet in its fullness. So we just keep going.
I love it. All right. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Anita. I want to thank our production team for today's episode. We've got Natasha, our editor, Robin on the show notes, and Chris on the decks putting it all together.
Wiki.
And I also want to thank our sponsors. Recovery Elevator, it all starts from the inside out. I love you guys.
I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior.